reading from this book here, from the Senior High Prince of the Nation, Evel, Gamasu. That means Gamasu means time is up. So that's what we know in English as Hebrew, even though it's a very bad translation of the word Hebrew because it comes from a double mistranslation of the Latin word Hebraicus, thus begotten Hebrew. Eve or Eve in Hebrew does not sound the same, but I'm reading from Evavio Gamasu, meaning Hebrews or time is up. Would you like to know the truth about black people's identity? Now, with me reading his book from Mauvi, out of West Africa, Ghana, what is now called the Volta region, which should be called the Eveland or the Eve Naigba. And I'm gonna start from the beginning. Black people suffering. Is there a solution? Is there a solution? Yes, there is. If you ever wanted to understand why black people are suffering all over the world and you want to know what needs to be done to stop it, then this booklet is for you. As I abbreviated the title, Who Are We? A lot of people are awakening to a lot of things in this world right now. So who are we? Who are we? There's a lot of people know who they are, but who are we as what is now a coined term Black, African American, Negro, etc. As a black person, undoubtedly you are aware that all is not well with the black race. You may also have wondered why, wherever you find black people in this world, they never seem to do so well as other races. White countries always seem to do well as opposed to the suffering and the degradation of black Africa and of the poverty of black people in America and the Caribbean. In the next few chapters, you are going to read information about your identity that will astonish you. You will have all the answers. The truth is, there are solutions to end black people's suffering. And the good news is, they are not as difficult as you may think. Nevertheless, there is a hurdle to overcome before getting to the solution. This difficulty is getting our people to know their true identity. That is where the problem is, not the solution itself. When more black people know their true identity, then we will know what to do to solve the problem. It is simple as that. This may come as a surprise, but what is holding back black people's development is similar to having a hereditary disease. You may know that to cure this type of sickness, knowing the patient's family history is crucial. Without such background knowledge, there can be no cure. Nevertheless, because what ails black people is hereditary, the cure lies knowing our true identity, which is hidden and buried in our history. Thus, knowing who we are by knowing our history is utmost importance to the solution. Ignorance of our true identity is the root cause. Ignorance of our identity is the root cause of our problems. Next section. The name. Do you recognize this word? EVE. Some people say EV. Some people say EVE. The correct pronunciation is the EVE. The EVE or the EVE. Do you recognize this word? This name holds the key, the answer, and the solution to black people's problems worldwide. In the next few chapters, I will show you the significance of the name and the secrets surrounding it. Even though you may never have heard of this name, nevertheless, excuse me, in the next few chapters, I will the significance of the name and the secrets surrounding it. Even though you may have never heard of this name, nevertheless, it is the true identity of millions of people in Africa and those sold into slavery from West Africa. EVE is pronounced Eve or Eve. Do not worry if you are struggling with the pronunciation. To help you get the pronunciation, next page. Pronunciation right. Visit the website that accompanies this book, www.mawuli, written MAWUVI, Mawuli, .com slash name pronunciation to hear the proper pronunciation of the name, providing answers. In Europe and the Americas, in Europe and the Americas, descendants of African slaves, desirous of knowing their true identity, have turned to DNA to trace their roots back to Africa. Unfortunately, this scientific tool has not provided the answers hoped for. Because of this, the answers to finding out, because of this, the answers to finding out what their true roots are continues to be elusive. Excuse me. The good news is you don't have to worry about where in Africa your ancestors came from anymore. I will give you the answers right now. By the time you finish this booklet, your quest to know your true identity will be fulfilled. It is not only the descendants of the slaves who are about to learn their true identity. Now read that again. Repeat. It is not only the descendants of the slaves, and the Ewe tongue is Kluvi, who are about to learn their true identity. Millions of people in West Africa, from whom most of the black people in the Americas originated, are about to discover new information about their origins. Therefore, just as the information herein will help our brothers and sisters across the Atlantic to discover their identity, so it will help millions in West Africa get to know their origins, their proper name, and identity as well. The Slave Coast. To begin providing these answers, let's take a look in time to West Africa during the slave trade and focus our attention in an area called the Slave Coast. The transatlantic slave trade is the name for the slave trade that took place between West Africa, the America continent, and Europe. During that period in history, the European traders in West Africa named various places based on what commodities they traded with the locals. For example, where the main commodity was gold, the area became known as the Gold Coast. Where the trade was in ivory, the name of the area became the Ivory Coast, and so forth. However, there is an area you may not have heard of. This place was bigger than the Gold Coast and the Ivory Coast combined. This was the Slave Coast. And remember, peoples, in the Ewe tongue, slave is Klovi. Klovi or Kluvi. Kluvi or Klovi means slave. Judging by the naming convention of the European traders in the Slave Coast, slaves were the main commodities. Consequently, most of the slaves were taken to the Americas, Europe, and the Caribbean, where mainly from the Slave Coast. However, despite slavery being the biggest trade in West Africa, many people have never heard of the slave coast. Because of this, some descendants of the slaves in Europe, America, and the Caribbean mistakenly associate the Gold Coast, now called Ghana, to be the main source of slavery to America. Therefore, it is not surprising to hear many Caribbean and Black American claim Ghana as their ancestral home. Due to this error, Black people living in Europe and America seeking their roots travel to Ghana, formerly Gold Coast, hoping to fill in the missing gaps in their ancestral history. These spend the time visiting the forts and castles that were holding cells of the slaves, hoping to find a connection. And here's a picture of it, peoples. Again, live from uptown Richmond, California, east of the San Francisco Bay Area, which would be in Northern California. Next page. Unfortunately, here's a picture of the slave coast in Kita, in West Africa, Keta or Kita. Unfortunately, they are going to the wrong places for answers. Unfortunately, they are going to the wrong places for the answers they seek. Prior to final departure to the Americas, slaves were held in the dungeons of the forts and castles in Ghana, Gold Coast. However, it does not mean the slaves were locals and came from the vicinity of those forts and castles. Hardly any slaves came from around around where those forts and castles. I'll read that again. I don't like how I read that. Hardly any slaves came from around where those forts and castles were on the coast. That's better. The slaves held in these forts and castles in the Gold Coast were people their captors brought from elsewhere. These places were usually hundreds of miles away. Thus, those forts and castles are no different from modern prisons. Buildings designed purposely to hold prisoners brought from all over the country. However, going by the convention whereby European traders name places based on the commodity traded, most of the slaves, or clovis, taken to America were from the slave coast. I'll read that again. Most of the clovis, or most of the slaves taken to America, were from the slave coast. Local history of the area supports this fact. Therefore, since most of the slaves came from this area in West Africa, it is the people in this area I will concentrate on to show the identity of many of our people. Thus, throughout this booklet, it is the people living in the area formerly called the Slave Coast that I will be discussing. This is logical because searching for answers from the people living around the forts and castles in Ghana, Gold Coast, would be a waste of time. The geography. Going by modern maps of West Africa, the slave coast extended from the Volta River in Ghana all the way to the present-day Nigeria. 4 countries, namely Ghana, Togo, Dahomey, aka Benin, and Nigeria, now occupied this area. As you can see, it covered a significant large part of West Africa. It is the Ewe people, known as the Hebrews or the ancient Israelites. It is the Ewe people, and not Ewe. Ewe is sheep. It is the Ewe people living in this area of West Africa and their descendants in Europe and in America. That is the subject of our discussion. Now that you know the perimeter of which area in Africa we are focusing on in order to, which I show right here, and it's showing the map, turn the page, reveal the identity of most black people in the world. The next thing is to tell you the significance of the name of the people of the former slave coast, named after ancient people. The Ewe people did not originate from West Africa. I repeat, named after ancient people. The Ewe people, which are known as the Israelites in America, the Ewe people did not originate from West Africa. They came from the Middle East, which again, people, you look at that term Middle East, it's a geopolitical term. There's no such thing as the Middle East. He's only writing it from what is written in antiquity or whatever, or written in modern times. Excuse me, I said it wrong, antiquity, I meant modern times. So again, named after ancient people, the Ewe people did not originate from West Africa. They came from the Middle East, geopolitical term, where they used to be mighty people with a world-renowned name. However, over time and through the ages excuse me, I don't like how I read that. I'm going to start that over. However, over time and through the ages of the people of the world replaced this famous name with something else. This accident in history inadvertently hid the glorious identity of these black people. And I'll read that again. This accident in history inadvertently hid the glorious identity of these black people. Not anymore is the glorious name to remain hidden, because I am hereby lifting the veil so that you know who we really are. With our identity thus revealed, we can rise and soar again to great heights as our ancestors. Meet the Ewe, aka the Hebrew. And I'll stop here, peoples. I'll stop here.